The station air was thick with tension when she entered. Her boots struck the metal floor like thunder. Soldiers from every species froze. Some stepped aside, some looked down. None dared to look directly at her. She was Zalith Ray, warrior of the Varkayuri Empire. Her armor was crimson with gold edges, marked with the crest of the Bladeburn, an elite clan feared across star systems. She didn't walk with pride, she walked with certainty. No one could touch her. No one ever had. She had faced warlords. Twice her size, killed champions. Broken bones with her bare hands. To most she was death in motion. To others she was a ghost they feared meeting in battle. But today was different. The Varkayuri Empire had joined a peace agreement with Earth. A fragile alliance had been formed, and Zalith was chosen to visit the human zones aboard the joint space. Station Unity-9. She wasn't pleased. Humans were weak, chaotic, emotional. Their technology was outdated, their soldiers soft. She didn't understand why her people respected them so much after a few battles. They were loud, undisciplined, fragile. Still, she walked in silence through the docking corridor, her sharp gaze scanning everything. Her two guards followed behind, but stayed far enough to give her space. She didn't need protection. She was the danger. At the far end of the hallway, she saw a dim-lit hangar with sparks flying. Someone was welding. A tall figure in grease-stained clothing stood with his back turned, focused on repairing a half-broken exosuit. She frowned. He hadn't noticed her arrival. That, in itself, was a problem. She stepped forward, boots loud. Still, the human didn't turn. She cleared her throat sharply. The man paused, slowly looked back over his shoulder, then turned to face her fully. He had sharp eyes. Calm eyes, not afraid, not nervous, just steady. His skin was marked with faint scars, his jaw rough with stubble. His uniform had no medals, only a name stitched into the chest. Whiffs tilted her head, unimpressed. "You are in my path," she said coldly. He looked her up and down, wiped his hands with a cloth, and took a slow step forward. "I didn't realize this was your hangar," he replied. His voice was deep, grounded. "It is now," she said. "Move." A second passed. Then, to her shock, he took another step forward, closer now. "You're used to people backing away, aren't you?" Reich asked. "Used to fear, obedience." She narrowed her eyes. "What of it?" He didn't smile. Didn't blink. He stepped right into her space, close enough to smell the burn marks on his clothes, then suddenly pressed her against the hangar wall with one strong arm across her chest plate. It wasn't painful. It wasn't aggressive. It was commanding. "I don't care who trained you," he said quietly. "Respect goes both ways." Her heart jumped. She didn't know why. She could have broken his wrist, kneed his ribs, snapped his neck in one clean motion. But she didn't. She stood still, frozen. His hand lingered for just another second. Then he stepped back. The room was quiet. Her guards were watching in silence from the hallway, stunned. No one had ever touched her like that. Reich picked up his welding torch again, turned around, and said over his shoulder, "Next time, knock first." Zalith didn't speak. Her hands remained at her sides. Her breath was shallow. She didn't understand what had just happened. She was trained to kill, not to feel. But for the first time in years, something cracked inside her. Something warm. Something confusing. She walked away without another word. Her steps weren't as steady now, and in her chest, something unknown had started to burn. The next morning, Zalith Ray stood in front of the mirror in her private quarters. The steam from her sonic shower still drifted in the air, but her mind wasn't calm. Her reflection stared back like a stranger. Her face was the same, sharp and strong. But behind her golden eyes, there was something new, something she didn't recognize. Hesitation. She gritted her teeth. Human Reich should have been broken the moment he touched her. She could have ended him in one strike. And yet, when his hand pressed against her chest plate, When his eyes met hers, she didn't move. Her body had frozen. No, her mind had frozen. She had trained since childhood to be untouchable. The unshakable. Warrior. Her blade had drawn the blood of generals. Her voice had silenced crowds. Her name alone had stopped wars. So why couldn't she silence him? Her guards had said nothing, but she'd seen their eyes. Shock, doubt. Whispered rumors were probably already running through the halls. That a human and unranked mechanic had stood his ground against the Bladeburn elite. She slammed her fist into the mirror. It cracked, but even as the glass shattered, that one moment replayed again. His hand, his voice. The way he looked at her, not with fear, not with awe, but with truth. Later that day, during her inspection of the Unity 9 lower deck, she spotted him again. Reich was speaking to a group of human cadets, showing them how to bypass a damaged reactor fuse. He hadn't seen her yet. She could have walked away. But her feet moved forward. He finally turned, sensing her presence. There was no tension in his face, no smirk either. Just calm focus. "Commander Ray," he said, voice even. She nodded stiffly. "You speak to your superiors now?" He leaned against a toolbox and crossed his arms. "You're not my superior, not here." Zalith narrowed her eyes. "You forget who I am." Reich stepped closer again. Not as fast this time. He didn't touch her, but his presence felt heavier than any blade. "No," he said, voice lower. "I think you're the one who's starting to forget." For a second, her body tensed, ready to strike. But he raised a hand not in defense, but to pull something from his pocket. He held up a small repair bolt. "You dropped this last night," he said, placing it on the nearby bench. "Maybe that armor of yours isn't as tight as you think." He walked past her. She stood there, stunned. Again, back in her room, she examined the bolt. It wasn't hers. She wore no such tech. So why had he said that? She gripped it tight. Maybe he was mocking her, or testing her. Maybe it was just a game. To him, but deep inside, she knew it wasn't. Wright didn't act like a man who played games. He acted like someone who had seen through her, the armor, the training, the silence, and found the person inside. And that thought scared her more than any battlefield. The next day, a meeting was called in the Central War Hall. Alien commanders from multiple species had gathered, and Reich was there standing quietly at the back. Zalith stood near the front, beside her general. The topic, joint combat trials. Humans and aliens would be paired in mixed squads to simulate battlefield cooperation. She rolled her eyes internally. Waste of time. Then the general spoke her name, Commander. "Zalith Ray will serve as squad captain in next week's war simulation. Her partner will be selected." "I'll do it," Reich said suddenly. Heads turned. Whispers echoed across the chamber. A human volunteering to fight alongside the Empire's fiercest weapon. Even Zalith felt her breath hitch. "You're not even a soldier anymore." One officer sneered. "I've seen more field battles than any officer here," Reich replied. The general tilted his head. "You're aware of the risk?" Reich glanced at Zalith. "Very aware." The room fell silent. She could have rejected the match. She had that power. Instead, she turned her face slightly and gave a single nod. The general approved. That night, she sat alone in the station's observatory. Stars blinked beyond the glass, endless and cold. And yet, inside her, something was changing, slowly, uncomfortably. She was used to being feared, obeyed, even worshipped, but never seen. Reich hadn't tried to dominate her or submit to her. He had simply stood his ground, and in that moment, he'd done something no one else had ever done. He had made her feel real. And now, for reasons she still didn't understand, she couldn't stop thinking about what that meant. The training field stretched wide across the lower sector of Unity 9, surrounded by high walls of glass and metal. Drones floated above, scanning every move. Across the ground stood soldiers of different species, paired up, locked in motion. testing combat styles in silence, and in the center of it all stood Zalith Ray and RYKE. No audience. No ceremony. Only one rule. Fight until the drones call it done. She stepped forward first, her armor glinting under artificial light, her gaze sharp and cold. She had faced creatures taller than drop ships, warriors who breathed fire, and beasts with bones like stone. But Reich didn't even wear armor, just a gray training shirt, black gloves, and a neutral expression. He raised his hand slowly, not in aggression, but readiness. Zalith struck fast, her elbow aimed straight for his jaw. He ducked, blocked, and pushed back, not with force, but precision. Again and again, she came at him, sweeps, kicks, sharp jabs, but every time he moved like water. Not trying to defeat her, only match her, understand her. She hated it, because she could feel her own rhythm slipping. She'd fought for glory, for pride, for domination. But this man, he fought for clarity, and that shook her, mid-spin. She slipped barely, just enough for Reich to catch her wrist and hold her in place. Their faces were inches apart now. Her breath was heavy. His was steady. "You're not angry," he said quietly. "You're scared." Her heart slammed against her chest. She shoved him back. "You know nothing about me," she snapped. Reich straightened, brushing dust from his shirt. "I know what it looks like when someone hides behind strength," he replied. "And I know what it feels like to be invisible. Until someone finally sees you." Her fingers twitched. She could have attacked again, could have ended this training session with one hard blow. But she didn't move, not because she couldn't, but because for the first time, someone had spoken words her soul had never heard before. Later, while reviewing footage of their session in her quarters, Zalith noticed something strange. In every frame, Reich never aimed to win. He aimed to balance. She watched herself tight, sharp, calculated, and then watched him open, reactive, alive. He didn't need to beat her. He needed to reach her. And maybe, just maybe, he already had. That night, she walked the halls of Unity 9 without her guards, without her armor. She didn't even realize she was heading toward the lower tech deck until she stopped, outside a dim maintenance bay. Inside, Reich stood alone, repairing a damaged flight suit. She didn't knock. He looked up, not surprised to see her. "I thought you'd be in the upper lounge, surrounded by admirers," he said, voice calm as ever. She stepped inside, arms crossed. "They admire the idea of me. You're the only one who seems to talk to the real person underneath." Reich set his tools down. "I don't talk to titles," he said. "I talk to eyes. And yours have been shouting for years." She blinked, chest tight. No one had ever said anything like that to her. He stepped forward, just enough to reach her line of breath. "You fight so hard, Zalith," he said softly. "But do you even know what you're fighting for anymore?" She didn't answer, because suddenly she didn't know. Moments later, a distant alarm sounded through the deck. Emergency drill. False fire alert. Station locked down for the next 5 minutes. The lights dimmed. Red pulses flashed. And in that flickering moment, both of them stood in silence, shadows and light brushing across their faces. She looked at him not as a warrior, not as a threat, but as a man who had seen what she buried. "I should have killed you," she whispered. He nodded. "You still could. I don't want to." He didn't flinch. And for the first time in her life, neither did she. When the lights returned, the lockdown lifted, but something inside her didn't unlock. Something stayed, tight, real. She turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. "You're different, Reich," she said without looking back. He chuckled faintly. "So are you. You just don't know it yet." And as she walked away, heart pounding against armor she no longer wore, she knew something dangerous had begun. Not a war, not a mission. Something far more threatening to a warrior like her. Understanding. The combat arena was empty. The light above flickered gently, as if holding its breath. The polished floor reflected shadows, wide and still. In the center, Zalathray stood alone, no armor. No guards, just her and the sword strapped across her. Back. She had sent the message hours ago. Meet me here, alone. Now she waited. The doors slid open behind her. Slow and quiet. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. She knew it was him. Reich stepped inside. A quiet calm in every move. He wore no uniform, only training gear, and that same unshaken look in his eyes. You called, he said simply. Zalath turned, face unreadable. You disrespected me, she said. He nodded once. You let me. Her eyes narrowed. I want a duel. He tilted his head. Why? She stepped closer. Because I don't understand you. And when I don't understand something, I fight it. Reich didn't move. Then maybe that's the problem. She unsheathed her sword in one slow motion. The metal rang through the chamber, clean and sharp. This isn't for revenge, she said. It's for clarity. Reich took a step forward. Not to fight, but to look her in the eyes. You want clarity? He asked. Then stop hiding behind steel. Zalath raised the sword, pointing it straight at his chest. Draw your weapon. He didn single quotes d. Instead, he unhooked the small blade at his side and placed it gently on the floor. She blinked. You think this is a joke? No, he said, voice calm. I just know this fight isn't about who's stronger. His words cut deeper than any blade. She lunged. A strike aimed at his shoulder, not fatal, but sharp. He sidestepped, fast and clean. Avoiding her without striking back, she came again, this time a downward slash. Sharp enough to leave a mark. He spun away. You fight like you're trying to be seen, he said. She shouted and kicked, barely missing his ribs. You think you know me? She hissed. I think you don't know yourself, Reich said. She froze. Just for a second, and in that pause he stepped close, placing a hand on her sword, gently pushing it down. Her heart pounded in her chest, louder than her breath. You've always been the weapon, he whispered. But someone turned you into one. You never chose it. Her hands shook. She dropped the sword. It clanged to the floor, echoing through the chamber. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. She turned her back to him, walking slowly toward the edge of the arena. Her voice was low. I trained my whole life to never be touched, never be known. I thought that was strength. Reich followed her at a distance. Maybe strength is letting someone see what's underneath. She looked over her shoulder. Her face was different now, still proud, still fierce but softer around the eyes. Not weak, just real. Later that night, in her private chamber, she sat beside her unused armor. The shine no longer mattered. She thought of Reich's hands, not raised to hurt, but to hold. She thought of his eyes, seeing past the power and into the girl who once begged her father for a name, not a title. For the first time, she wondered what it would be like to let someone close without fear, without command, without war. A soft knock came at her door. She rose, heart to udding. It wasn't scheduled. It wasn't protocol. She opened the door. Reich stood there, holding a small box. I brought you something, he said. She looked down. Inside the box, a single black glove rested. A human combat glove, same kind she had seen him wear during training. Shrugged. You kept flinching when I touched your hand. Thought you might need time to get used to it. She took it slowly. Her fingers brushed his. This time she didn't pull away. The training glove sat untouched beside her bed. Zalathray stared at them in silence. The room was quiet, but her thoughts were not. Her fingers hovered over the smooth fabric, as if afraid it might burn. It was just a gift, just a glove. Yet, it felt heavier than any blade she had ever carried, because it came with no orders. No rules. Only kindness. And she didn't know what to do with that. She walked slowly to the central archive tower, far from the noise of the cadets and combat units. The walls here held data older than her empire. Battle records, council treaties, Personal files. She entered a secure code and opened her private log. A memory played. A younger Zalith, no more than 8, stood in the middle of a dark hall. Her father, the Supreme Blade, stood above her, his hand bloody, holding a broken training staff. "You will not cry," he growled. "Weapons do not weep." Her arm was broken, twisted at a wrong angle. She did not cry. She bowed instead. "I understand, Father." "No," he snapped. "You obey. One day you will lead. But first, you must forget how to be soft." The memory ended. Zalith closed her eyes. She had forgotten softness. She had buried it so deep, it only returned now in Reich's eyes, in his voice, in the silence between them. Meanwhile, Reich sat alone in the tech bay. His hands were busy, but his mind wasn't. He kept thinking about her, how someone so powerful could carry so much weight behind her eyes, how every move she made was controlled. Perfect, but hollow. He pulled out a datapad and opened the old Alliance files. Hidden beneath security layers, he found records of the Bladeburn child training system. 12-hour combat drills. Cold chambers, no affection. No sleep without performance. Praise only through pain. He leaned back, shaking his head. She never had a chance. He muttered. The next morning, she found him again. This time, not in the arena. Not in the war rooms. He was sitting on a small bench at the back of the hydro garden alone, sipping something hot. She approached slowly. He looked up. "Didn't expect you here." "I didn't plan to be," she replied. She sat beside him. For a while, neither spoke. Then she said it, voice low and tight. "My father once said I was born to be a sword, not a soul." Reich looked at her gently. "What do you believe?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned her head toward the trees growing under the artificial sky. "I used to believe him," she whispered. "Now I'm not so sure." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small object. A steel coin, old and scratched. "My brother gave me this before he died," he said. "Told me to keep it close. Not for luck, but to remember who I am when everything else falls apart." She took the coin, feeling its weight. "Do you ever forget?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Sometimes, but people like you help me remember." She met his eyes, and something inside her chest moved again. Not pain. Not fear. Something warmer. That night, she dreamed for the first time in years. But it wasn't of battle. It was of a long corridor, lit by soft blue light. At the end stood Reich, holding out his hand. Not asking her to kneel. Not demanding anything. Just waiting. And in the dream, she stepped forward without armor, without fear. When she woke, she didn't feel weaker. She felt alive. And for the first time, she put on the gloves he gave her, one finger at a time, slow and deliberate. She looked at herself in the mirror. Same eyes, same fire. But this time, not for war, for something else. Something new. The arena roared to life. War games had begun. Unity 9 was no longer just a station. It was a battlefield of controlled chaos. Soldiers from different species flooded the simulation decks. Weapons hummed, drones zipped overhead, and digital terrain changed in real time. It wasn't real war, but it felt close enough to raise heartbeats. Each squad would face dynamic threats, ambushes, sabotage, fake hostage rescues, and tactical traps. The purpose, unity through fire. Zalith stood silent. At the edge of the prep zone, arms crossed, eyes scanning. Her crimson armor gleamed under the simulation lights. But something was different now. She wasn't wearing the helmet. She wanted to see. And more importantly, she wanted to be seen. "Squads will form in 30 seconds, came the command from the speakers above. "No forced pairings. Choose your partner." Around her, warriors rushed to match up. Then she saw him. Reich stood across the field, calm as ever, hands by his sides. Their eyes met. Without a word, he walked straight to her. "You waited," she said. "I told you I would," he replied. A nearby soldier raised an eyebrow. "You're pairing with her?" Reich smiled faintly. "She's the one I trust." Zaleth looked at him, then forward, heart steady. So did the system. Squad 7, confirmed. Reich and XALITH. The first mission hit them fast. Hostile territory, the Konga. Screen flashed. Recover stolen data core and extract through enemy zone. The moment the countdown ended, they dropped into simulation. Blinding wind, ruined buildings, simulated bullet fire. The chaos hit like a storm. Zaleth led first, slicing down a drone midder with one swing. Reich followed, blasting a fake enemy with a shock cannon. Their movement was natural, fluid like two sides of the same current. She didn't shout orders. He didn't wait for permission. They moved together. Inside a broken tower. They found the data core, but it was a trap. Walls collapsed behind them. Robotic enemies swarmed in. Zaleth blocked the entrance with her blade, roaring with fury. "Go, I'll cover." "I don't leave partners," Reich shouted, throwing a pulse bomb over her shoulder. The wall burst open. Smoke filled the hall. "Left." "Stairwell," he said quickly. She didn't argue. They ran. Dodging, jumping, shooting through digital dust. Then the real test came. A drone above fired an impel bolt straight at them. Zaleth saw it first. Without thinking, she spun midder, catching Reich by the chest and slamming him to the ground, shielding him with her body. The blast hit her back. Her system shorted for 3 seconds. 3 seconds of darkness. But in those seconds, she heard him whisper, "You didn't have to do that." Her voice came back quiet, strained. "I didn't plan to." When the systems rebooted, they stood and kept moving. By the time they reached extraction, the drone AI announced, "Squad 7, mission complete, fastest time, highest sync rating." Cheers broke out across the arena, but Zaleth didn't hear them. She was still looking at Reich, his chest rising, eyes searching hers. Something passed between them that no metal could explain. Later that evening, a private room was prepared for metal review and feedback. She sat on the edge of the long table, helmet beside her. He stood across, arms folded, watching her. "You should have let me take the hit," he said. She shook her head. "You would have done the same." He walked closer. "Maybe," he said, "but I didn't expect you to feel anything." She didn't speak. Instead, she stepped forward, placed her gloved hand on his chest right where the blast would have landed. "I felt everything," she said. And for the first time in her life, she didn't pull back. He placed his hand over hers. Slowly. No words. No orders. Just silence that said more than sound ever could. The air on Unity 9 felt different. Softer. Not because the station changed, but because something inside her had. Zaleth Ray stood on the balcony of the highest tower, looking down at the joint training grounds. Humans and aliens laughed together below. Even the wind seemed gentler. She had never laughed here. She had never stood still this long either. But today was the final day of war games, and the final day of her assignment. By command of the Blade-born, she was to return to the Varkari homeworld. Her performance had impressed the War Council. Her pairing with a human unexpected. Her victory undeniable. They called it a success. They were wrong. Whatever this was between her and Reich, it wasn't a mission. It was something no council could understand. Something her people had never taught her to feel. Choice. He waited in the observation deck, quiet, hands behind his back. When the door opened, he didn't turn. "I heard you leave in 2 hours," he said. She walked beside him, looking out the same window. "Yes," she said. "That's what they want." He turned now, looking at her face. "But what do you want?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal chip, her command sigil, marked with her bloodline. She placed it in his hand. "I've carried this for years," she said softly. "It bound me to duty, to pain, to silence. I want you to have it. Because for the first time, I don't want to be what I was made to be. His brow tightened. If you give this up, they'll strip your rank. She nodded. Then let them. Reich took a slow breath. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. He said. You're not, she said, voice firm now. You're the reason I found something else. As departure time neared, she stood at the shuttle bay entrance. Dozens of soldiers gathered to salute her farewell, but she wasn't wearing armor. She wore a simple black jacket, one of Reich's old training uniforms. Sleeves rolled, no symbols on her chest. The council envoy waited beside the boarding ramp, holding her new orders, but she didn't walk forward. She turned to face the hall behind her, and there he was. Ryke. Hands in his pockets, looking like he had no idea whether to step forward or stand still. She crossed the space between them. He opened his mouth to speak, but she raised a hand. Don't ask me if I'm sure, she said. Then she reached behind her head, unhooked the last piece of Varkari steel. She wore a single neckplate, engraved with her family's mark, and dropped it into the hands of the envoy. Gasps echoed through the room, but she never looked back. Later that evening, on the edge of the Unity Gardens, Reich and Zaleth sat under soft lights, sharing silence. Not the silence of fear, the silence of peace. I never thought I'd see this day, she said. I never thought I'd change someone like you, he replied. She leaned back on the bench, closing her eyes. You didn't change me, she whispered. You just showed me who I could be. He smiled, brushing his hand against hers, and this time she didn't flinch. She curled her fingers into his, slow and sure. Months passed. Unity 9 became the first mixed leadership station in the galaxy. And in its command wing, a new plaque was mounted. Peace is not forged through war, but through the courage to be seen. Below it, two names, Zaleth Ray Reich Voss, and every time someone asked how the most feared alien warrior gave up her title to stay on a human station, she only said one thing. I was trained to be a weapon, but someone gave me a reason to be human instead.